some of the visitors and all that, but we know later on, remember the budget is there, the state of nation address, and I think we shall still have him.
It was a thing of do not air your dirty linen in the sight of visitors.
In the sight of visitors. But next week, Judy, or I whisper this to you, but no. This week, members of parliament are going to be sworn in.
Right.
Starting today. Now remember, after the swearing in of members of parliament, the next is the meeting to elect the speaker and deputy speaker. So that business of parliament, then they will schedule when officially the parliament will start. Now, PLU, Patriotic League of Uganda, with the chairman, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the CDF, yesterday retracted its previous position regarding the speakership race. And there is the secretary of that clearly stating that they are no longer backing Anita Among and Thomas Tayebwa as previously for speakership and deputy speaker. They clearly told their members and MPs that until further notice, when the chairperson of NRM clearly states who should be supported. Now, previously, it was a done deal. That no, for continuity, for this, for that, these two are bouncing back. But then, after the victory of President Yoweri Museveni, I think there was something that happened there when he said, we may take this decision back and have the Chankwan's retreat of MPs elect. And I remember that retreat where they went. President Museveni came out and hinted on that. Now, I don't know if by then the speaker had received information of the later that was out, saying this is no longer our choice until further notice. Now, what does this mean to the speakership race? Just next week, will we see? Of course, I know this is good news to know, but Mao,
indeed,
he could be taking champagne if he does, and of course, it could be good news to some other people there who want to attempt to give it a shot, but also maybe those that felt democratically, because I think there's even one who had gone to court, or he withdrew the case, who had gone to court saying, no, you can't deny us the right to select, to vote for a speaker. So this is good and bad news, because if you know you are assured of automatically bouncing back, and now PLU, Patriotic League of Uganda, brings up that. I don't know what that means to those two, but time is the best.
True,
and it will let us know.
Indeed, time is the best. And as UBC, we are here to bring you every story as it unveils, every fact as it's tabled, and definitely speaking with those that are within the game that is
and
in the field.
Something is disturbing my... I'm just trying to find out what could have caused this quick change. What could have caused this quick change? That we withdraw, we retract.
You reminded me of this challenge, this interesting challenge on social media of we listen and we don't judge. I think ours is to watch
no, that is to our viewer. Definitely, that is to our viewer. For us, we give you.
We watch.
We give you. We watch.
We give you analysis. The judgment is yours.
Now that is something I leave to our viewer.
Right.
What could have caused this sudden change?
Indeed. On that note, let's take that trip down the local scenes lane. Now,
President Yoweri Museveni yesterday arrived at Kololo Independence Grounds for the swearing-in ceremony at 5 minutes to 11 a.m. Straight to the podium for the anthems. After the anthems, the president proceeded to inspect the parade as the incumbent leader. Subsequently, the standard presidential flag was lowered, symbolizing the conclusion of the current presidential term. At 10 to midday, the president was sworn in as the new leader of the Republic of Uganda and was thereafter presented with the instruments of power, the Constitution, the coat of arms, and the national flag. This was followed by another inspection of the parade of the sworn-in president of Uganda. After the new parade, the Uganda People's Defense Forces showcased their military artillery weapons, encompassing both the Air Force and the Land Forces Command. In his address, President Museveni expressed gratitude towards the heads of state present, acknowledging their solidarity and contribution to his being in power since 1980s. Museveni congratulated Ugandans for participating in the elections and commended other political parties for the peace during the electoral process. Museveni declared that this term of his administration should be termed as no sleep. Chisanja, no sleep. So the president declared term no sleep, and what does this mean for Ugandans? The Ugandans at the ceremony shared views about the president's plan for the next 5 years. Other leaders have tasked the president on the alleviation of poverty. And relatedly, security agencies maintained heavy deployment across Kampala and surrounding areas as Ugandans witnessed the swearing-in ceremony of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni for his 6th term in office. Both covert and those in uniform security personnel conducted continuous patrols along major roads and strategic points in the city, while traffic officers guided motorists and pedestrians during the event. Ugandans witnessed the swearing-in ceremony of President Yoweri Museveni to officially commence another 5-year leadership term. From the early morning hours, security presence remained high across Kampala city centers, with patrol vehicles, foot patrols, teams and joint security units deployed at different intersections, road junctions, and strategic installations. Traffic flow on several roads leading to Kololo Independence Ceremonial Grounds was also monitored, with special cut-off points and intermittent diversions established to control access to the venue. Traffic police officers, supported by other security agencies, guided motorists on road use throughout the day. Pedestrians and business operators within Kampala's central business district seemed cooperatively and were assured of security personnel and carried out their usual businesses, as surveillance operations were ongoing to prevent any insecurity or security threats. However, in some parts of the city, due to the public holiday and restricted access routes, Kampala generally remained calm with steady flow of people and traffic. Still on the swearing-in, as President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni embarks on another 5-year journey at the helm of the country's top office, many citizens said the next term must focus less on promises and more on delivery. For many, the rehabilitation of Uganda's road network remains a top priority, with traders and motorists pointing to potholes-ridden roads, traffic congestion, and poor drainage systems that continue to affect businesses and transport across the city and upcountry districts. Others are demanding a tougher stance against corruption, urging that billions of shillings continue to be lost through misuse of public resources, affecting healthcare, education, and service delivery. In the health sector, citizens are calling for better equipped government hospitals, improved access to medicines, and increased staffing in rural health centers. Education remains another major concern, with calls for improved school infrastructure, better teacher welfare, and increased funding to government schools. Meanwhile, sections of the youth believe the president should use the new term to recognize and reorganize his cabinet and create more opportunities for young people through employment, innovation, and entrepreneurship support programs. Despite the mixed reactions, many agree that the expectations are high as Ugandans look towards a term they hope will address long-standing challenges affecting everyday life. The Patriotic League of Uganda has made a U-turn on the speakership race for the 12th Parliament. In a statement read by PLU Secretary General David Kabanda, The pressure group affiliated to the commander of the defense forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, has reiterated its earlier position to endorse both Anita Among and Thomas Tayebwa for speakership and deputy speakership respectively. In a statement, MPs-elect affiliated to PLU have been urged to wait for the official guidance by the NRM party chairperson Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Now that brings us to the end of our local stories this morning.
Well, thank you, Robert. Now let's have a look at what we have on the foreign scene. Interesting stories at that, but we'll start off with this one. That is U.S. President's visit to Beijing. U.S. President Donald Trump departed for Beijing on Tuesday afternoon to meet with China's President Xi Jinping, saying he would have a long talk about Iran with the Chinese leader, but that trade would be the main focus. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Ismail Baghei says the U.S.-Israel war on Iran is one between a proud people and the professional liars who fabricated justifications for atrocity. Al Jazeera's correspondent in Washington, D.C. says Trump's current position appears to be that the ceasefire will continue until he says so, after the president earlier said he would win the war peacefully or otherwise. Lebanon's health ministry reports that 2 paramedics were killed and a third was wounded in another Israeli-targeted attack on emergency workers in southern Lebanon. Speaking to reporters on Tuesday, Trump said, "I don't think we need any help with Iran," and declared that the U.S. will win the war one way or the other. Trump's 3-day visit to Beijing comes at a fraught time for the U.S. president. Now, Robert, I don't know if you've seen a video yet of President Emmanuel Macron in Kenya ordering an audience to keep quiet and pay attention.
I haven't come across that.
Oh, very interesting clip at that, where he stood up, interrupted speakers on the stage. And in fact, one of the moderators had told him that it's not yet your turn. He picked the mic and told the audience, can you keep quiet and pay attention to people who are speaking sense to you? If at all you have any other conversations, take them out. And then took his seat back. But it has a conversation online with Africans saying if it were an African president doing it in France, is it even possible for an African president doing it?
You see, one thing I've learned in life is when you know your rights, you're able to do such things. But most of the times Africans, we don't know our rights. That is why in Africa, a guest of honor arrives late. And it is known. But they will tell you in Africa, people who are supposed to be accountable to you, you go to our hospitals. I'm a client in an hospital, but the staff in the hospital
treat me like a servant.
Treat me like a servant.
Interesting. Now, looking at away from that French president scenario, rather interesting though, because it has a lot of controversy going on around it, although you would think that the president had all the rights to ask the audience to keep quiet so that they'd pay attention to those who are speaking. But that's not what we are bringing to you as a story. What we're bringing really is the fact that French President Emmanuel Macron has announced 23 billion euros. That's about $27 billion of investment during the African Forward Summit in Kenya. Macron said on Monday that Africa and France had a partnership of equals with common objectives, as he announced 14 billion euros, that's about $16.4 billion of investments in private and public funds from French companies, and 9 billion euros, that's about $10.5 billion from African ones, on energy transition, agriculture, and artificial intelligence. These investments would create 250,000 jobs in France and Africa. Macron said that at the 2-day summit, France's first in an English-speaking African country, which started on Monday. Now, quote unquote, we are not simply here to come and invest on the African continent alongside you. We need great African business leaders to come and invest in France, he told the heads of state and leaders of more than 30 African nations, including Francophone countries, at Nairobi's Convention Center. And that too is what underpins this relationship, now entirely free of hang-ups, Macron said. That brings us to the end of what we have on the foreign scene. Let's dig straight into what the dailies have this morning. Obviously, the swearing-in ceremony is a headline by all means, but which paper are we starting with, Robert?
I choose the New Vision this morning, where speakership race, PLU withdraws support for Among and Tayebwa. That is up the New Vision. Now we move to no corruption, no sleep. Museveni outlines key priorities for 2026-2031. And what other leaders said, full Museveni speech. Fashion, guess who stole the show at the swearing-in? And I know here Judy is much interested in that. And use the peace and infrastructure to build wealth. Without wealth creation, there will be no applicable quantum of jobs. And Yoweri Museveni receives the constitution after taking oath during the inauguration ceremony at Koro Independence Grounds. May I rest my case with the Vision and allow me now go to the Daily Monitor. Muhoozi withdraws support for Among speakership bid. Term no sleep. Key commitments made by President Museveni. Ugandans demand low taxes, better services. Museveni avoids transition debate in speech. Now where does this come from? We are swearing in a new president. Why would you then? Can you make a will on your birthday? Does it make sense? And here we come, the pushing mechanics of taxing border. The Excise Duty Amendment Act 2026 was passed by Parliament, raising the excise duty payable at first registration of a motorcycle from 200,000 to 500,000, a 150% increment. Now, the lizard is here. Muhoozi withdraws support for Among his speakership bid. Then Julie's friend says, believing in the Trinity is not working, a question. Now, I have the Observer this morning. Will the 7th term be the charm? A question there.
Hey.
And then we have Uganda's most controversial parliament finally closes. Okay, and they're referring to the 11th parliament. Museveni at 81, Ugandans 40-year political paradox. The Observer, and a special supplement of Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo 2026. Well, there's also a picture of this Jamaican artist. How Spice turned Lugogo into weirdest dance hall playground. My God, I saw one of our artists here in Uganda. It's as if we were heading to hell with his dancers. It was as if we were in a hell.
Oh, well, that's the breeding ground for such. But moving on, let's have a look at what the Citizen has. And that's representing Tanzania. LPG prices rise amid spiraling fuel costs. Rising fuel prices are increasingly spilling over into key sectors of the economy, with the latest impact now being felt in the cost of liquefied petroleum gas, the clean cooking energy source the government has been promoting under its national clean energy agenda. Meanwhile, car imports post strong annual growth and wide depression cases are on the increase. Also wanted, tougher laws to curb noise pollution at markets. Interesting. And MCL introduces AI policy to guide innovation in newsroom operation. Now, heading to the Daily Nation, that is representing Kenya, playing with numbers. That's the headline on there. And the Uhuru administration attacked Auditor General's scathing report on Eurobond. And also Africa bids for energy deals in France. Matters education, teenage pregnancy crisis in junior school. And looking at matters fraud, Mavoko land cartels, fraud, force and court battles with no relief. All of those stories from the dailies. Just grab yourself a copy of any to make sure that you dig deeper into the stories. For now, let's have a short break, and when we get back, it's another conversation. Just be sure to set the number 0709602592 and be part of the conversation that we shall delve deep into the real. For now, good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning.
On it, like somehow he didn't talk much about this issue of human rights violation. Also is another thing that comes up. Then for us here, when talked about the roads, this Kampala thing whenever it rains, you know, but maybe that wasn't for that day, despite also having some of the visitors and all that. But we know later on, remember the budget is there, the state of national address, and I think we shall still have him.
It was a thing of do not air your dirty linen,
yes,
in the sight of visitors.
In the sight of visitors. But next week, Judy, or I whisper this to you, but no. This week, members of parliament are going to be sworn in.
Right.
Starting today. Now remember, after the swearing in of members of parliament, the next is the meeting to elect the speaker and deputy speaker. So that business of parliament, then they will schedule when officially the parliament will start. Now, PLU, Patriotic League of Uganda, with the chairman, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the CDF, yesterday retracted its previous position regarding the speakership race. And there is the secretary of that clearly stating that they are no longer backing Anita Among and Thomas Tayebwa as previously for speakership and deputy speaker. They clearly told their members and MPs that until further notice, when the chairperson of NRM clearly states who should be supported. Now, previously, it was a done deal. That no, for continuity, for this, for that, these two are bouncing back. But then, after the victory of President Museveni, I think there was something that happened there when he said, we may take this decision back and have the Chankwan's retreat of MPs elect. And I remember that retreat where they went. President Museveni came out and hinted on that.